Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's headlines, during a speech which marks the opening events for Israel's Holocaust Memorial Day, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accuses the West of not learning its lesson regarding World War II. Iran warns it would only accept a final nuclear deal if the P5+1 would simultaneously lift all sanctions imposed on it, which has severely crippled its economy. IDF forces detained dozens of Hamas Islamists in the West Bank suspected of planning attacks in Israel. During a speech at a ceremony in Jerusalem's Holocaust Memorial Museum, Yad Vashem, which marks the opening events for Israel's Holocaust Memorial Day, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the West has not learned its lesson regarding World War II.
ההסכם הרע שמתגבש עם איראן מלמד שהלקח ההיסטורי לא הופנם. מול פעולותיה האגרסיביות של איראן, המערב מוותר.
While much of the rest of the world appears inclined to support efforts to reach a negotiated solution with Iran, and as the Islamic Republic celebrated in its capital streets after the framework nuclear deal was struck, the Jewish state remains an outlier, warning the international community of Iran's hidden aspirations and its concerns regarding Tehran's previous statements calling for Israel's destruction. Earlier in the month, U.S. President Barack Obama mentioned several times during a speech that the United States stood shoulder to shoulder with Israel on security and would not allow any daylight to get in between their positions, but the reassurances given by the American leader have not satisfied the Prime Minister.
כשם שהנאצים שאפו לרמוס את הציוויליזציה ולהשליט במקומה את הגזע העליון עלי אדמות, תוך השמדתו של העם היהודי, כך חותרת איראן להשתלט על האזור וממנו להתפשט הלאה, תוך כוונה מוצהרת להשמיד את מדינת היהודים.
Meanwhile, a 2-minute siren was heard all over Israel this morning as Israelis stopped their activities and stood in silence in memory of the 6 million Jewish victims of the heinous atrocities committed by the Nazis during World War II. In related news, the Holocaust Memorial Museum, Yad Vashem, opened an exhibition in Jerusalem to remember the 1.5 million children out of the 6 million Jews murdered. The exhibition, called Children in the Holocaust, Stars Without a Heaven, depicts a forest of trees exhibiting personal stories of children through childhood themes of friendship, playtime, and family. Visitors walk through the exhibition that begins with displays illustrating the world of children before the Holocaust and during wartime.
Children are, in any given society, the most vulnerable part of the society on the one hand. They are naive, they are unprotected, they need the world of the adults to protect them. But on the other hand, they symbolizes the hope, the future. And those children have been murdered, and we are asking ourselves, did the murderous effects destroys the hope, destroys the future? And the answer is no.
One of the personal stories on display is that of Marta Goren from then Poland, now Western Ukraine. Marta was only 8 years old when her parents were rounded up with another 200 Jews and brought to the Black Forest near Cholkov, where they were shot and then buried in mass graves. Sitting with her husband at her home in the Israeli city of Rehovot, the 80-year-old Holocaust survivor says she was deeply moved to learn about the exhibition and her personal contribution. Goren added that the exhibition took her back to a grim and alienated childhood.
הרעיון לעשות תערוכה לזכרם של ילדים שעברו את השואה, של אלה שזכו כמוני ואחרים שלא. חושבת שזה משהו מאוד מאוד מיוחד, והייתי מאוד נרגשת כששמעתי שבחרו להנציח את הסיפור שלי, כי הסיפור שלי זה לא רק אני, הסיפור שלי זה אמא שלי, הסיפור שלי זאת המשפחה הפולנית שלי, והסיפור שלי מייצג ילדים רבים מאוד שזכו ליום השחרור. כשהסתכלתי וככה לא יכולתי להוציא מילה כשראיתי, כי חשבתי עץ. וחשבתי באמת שמאז שנפרדתי מאמא שלי, שהייתי בת 8, סך הכל זאת תהייה בעולם זר ומוזר, במשפחה שלא הכרתי, בעיר גדולה, עם ילדים שמעולם לא רק שלא הכרתי, גם לא ידעתי איך לשחק, כי אף פעם לא שיחקתי. ואף פעם לא הלכתי לבית ספר, ואיך לצאת מתוך כל המבוך הזה, ומתוך כל השקרים האלה, שעטפתי את עצמי.
Never again. Now to Iran, the Islamic Republic said it would only accept a final nuclear deal if the P5+1, the United States, Russia, China, France, Britain, and Germany would simultaneously lift all sanctions imposed on it, which has severely crippled its economy. The comments made by President Hassan Rouhani came the day after U.S. President Barack Obama was forced to give Congress a say in any future agreement, including the right to veto the lifting of sanctions imposed by U.S. lawmakers.
بداند دنیا 5 به اضافه 1 بداند مجلس نمایندگان آمریکا و سنا رئیس جمهور آمریکا دولت آمریکا همه بدانند در این توافق اگر پایان تحریم نباشد توافقی نخواهد بود.
President Obama has invested enormous political capital throughout his presidency in securing an agreement to ensure Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon, relying on tight sanctions that crippled Iran's economy and forced it to negotiate. A combination of US and EU sanctions have choked off nearly 1.5 million barrels per day of Iranian exports since early 2012, reducing its oil exports by 60% to around 1 million barrels a day. A framework nuclear agreement between Iran and the P5+1 was reached in Switzerland on the 2nd of April and aimed at clearing the way for a final settlement on the 30th of June. The discussions are expected to resume on the 21st of April, however. Different interpretations have emerged over what was agreed in the framework, suggesting that nailing down a final agreement will be unlikely, even without the added complication of the U.S. Congress. Meanwhile, a delegation from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, arrived in Tehran for scheduled technical talks. The talks between the IAEA run parallel to the negotiations with world powers. In other news, suspicion of a terror attack last night in Jerusalem. Around midnight, the driver of an Arab vehicle, a resident of North Jerusalem, hit 2 people, a man and a woman who were standing at a bus stop in the Ramat Eshkol neighborhood. The 25-year-old man was evacuated to a nearby hospital, but unfortunately succumbed to his wounds early this morning. The woman who was injured in the incident remains in very serious condition. It is yet clear whether it was a terror attack or a traffic accident. The driver was slightly injured and was taken to the Hadassah Medical Center in Mount Scopus. The police are investigating the incident, and according to a police spokesperson, one other person who was with the driver in the car is held for questioning. In other news, IDF forces detained dozens of supporters of the Islamist Hamas organization in the West Bank in a raid conducted overnight. According to reports, some of those arrested were planning attacks against Israel. Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip while also enjoying broad support in the West Bank, advocates the destruction of the Jewish state and has been actively pursuing the planning and operating of attacks inside Israel. Thank you for watching us. I'm Jonathan Hassan of Erev Tov, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.